So good morning again. Today we start a new series, and it is based on the work of Matt Kahn, in particular his book, The Universe Always Has a Plan, the 10 Golden Rules of Letting Go. And so it is the overarching goal of living these golden rules that Matt offers in his teachings is to offer us the sense of emotional freedom and to have the experience of the liberation of our soul. And his whole premise is that our spiritual journey, our spiritual growth and transformation is all about us relinquishing control or giving control to our ego, also called personality self. It's into the hands of our divine soul that knows all. And so we know that one of Charles Fillmore's teachings is to know the who and the what of you. I say it all the time, that we are both human and divine. And so it is not about, sometimes we hear the word ego, it's like, oh, but it is knowing that this divine plan, we came into this world and that the ego or personality self somehow allowed us to survive in this physical world, and that there is some divine plan that we are here to remember, to awaken, and to fully choose to serve, and to return home knowing ever so deeply through free will who we are, the what of who we are, that we are divine, that we are eternal. And so one of the ways that we do that is just really having that understanding. And so one of the powerful explanations of the formation of ego or personality self is done, I believe, by Ruiz in the Four Agreements. He calls it the process of domestication. And so I'd like to share a video of that with you this morning.
If we see a child who is 2 or 3, perhaps 4 years old, we find a free human. Very young children are not afraid to express what they feel. They are not afraid to love. They don't worry about the past, don't care about the future, and only live in the present moment. As children, our normal human tendency is to enjoy life, to play, to explore, to be happy, and to love. But what has happened with the adult human? Why are we so different? The humans who take care of us teach us what they know, which means they program us with knowledge, including social, religious, and moral rules of their culture. They hook our attention, pass on the information, and teach us to be like them. We learn how to be a man or a woman according to the society in which we are born. We learn how to behave the right way in our society, which means how to be a good human. In truth, we are domesticated the same way that a dog, a cat, or any animal is domesticated, through a system of punishment and reward. We're told that we're a good boy or a good girl when we do what the grown-ups want us to do. We're a bad boy or a bad girl when we don't do what they want us to do. All the rules and values of our family and society are imposed on us. The people we live with tell us their opinions, what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong, what is beautiful and what is ugly. Just like a computer, all that information is downloaded into our head. We are innocent. We believe what grown-ups tell us. We agree. and the information is stored in our memory. At a certain point, all the opinions of our parents and teachers, religion and society, make us believe that we need to be a certain way in order to be accepted. They tell us the way we should be, the way we should look, the way we should behave. And because it's not okay for us to be what we are, we start pretending to be what we are not. By the time we are teenagers, we don't need anyone to domesticate us. We've learned to judge ourselves, punish ourselves, and reward ourselves according to the same belief system we were given, and using the same system of punishment and reward. The domestication may be easier for people in some places in the world, and harder for people in other places. But in general, none of us has a chance of escaping the domestication. None of us.
Before I go on, I just would like you to just place a word or a couple of words that comes up for you after watching that video. Powerful, culture, cultural socialization, powerlessness, control. So let us take a deep breath. So I think, again, that knowing the who and the what is important. And so I know the way, I mean, we do the best we can with what we know in consciousness. And a lot of times we repeat, if you're a parent, kind of what was modeled. But, I think that we are evolving. But I also think that there is a divine plan for all of us and somehow experiencing the ego. So let us just look at knowing that we have the power of choice in any given moment. And so not only have we been conditioned through right and wrong, I'd just like to just really like hone in on these words of Ruiz from that video. So we learn how to behave the right way in our society, which means how to be good humans. Through a system of punishment and rewards, we are told that we are a good boy or a good girl when we do what the grown-ups want us to do. We are bad boys or bad girls when we don't do what they want us to do. I mean, just think about it, right? If you do your homework now, you get to have dessert. If you don't do your homework, then you get to go up in your room and no TV tonight. And the list can go on and on and on. And besides learning through what is good and bad, right and wrong, how to behave from the systems of reward and punishment, Matt Kahn would add to the list that we are taught to determine right and wrong also from the reactions of others in our lives. That when we show up a certain way and they act a certain way, then we take that on to kind of mold ourselves. We take on stories about ourselves and myths about ourselves. And then we kind of judge our choices based on their reactions, as he puts it. While this may have helped me develop an inner compass of empathy, it also raised me to perceive life from a rather codependent point of view. Whether it was being afraid of upsetting my parents, getting on Santa's naughty list, or even fear of disappointing God, I learned to measure the ability of my choices by how much pleasure or how little pain it caused other people in my life. How many of you can relate to that? Like knowing when it was a good time to maybe ask something of one of your parents or someone based on how they were showing up. And so we know again that they did the best that they did. And this is really about our awakening and knowing that we have the power of choice now as we continue to evolve in our own consciousness. And so as Matt was a young adult, and he was beginning his own spiritual journey, he started to reflect. He started to look back on so many experiences that when he was being that good little boy, he was exhibiting good behavior. He was doing the things that mom wanted him to do. And he realized that so much of that good behavior went unnoticed. And it didn't really give him the approval and love that he was seeking. And then he also noticed that that same wrath or unhappiness or disdain that was projected onto him, he noticed that it was also projected by his mom to his dad, to his sisters, to his mother's boss, to the people at temple that she volunteered with, to the servers at the restaurants. And then he started to say, maybe it's really not all about me. And maybe it might just be about what's going on for mom. Okay, and we're just saying mom because this was one of he had some very painful experiences with his mom. It could be anybody in our lives, right? And so he just shared this realization as he reflected on, as he was on doing some deep dive. And he said that he came to a realization that how frustrated, disempowered, overworked, and underappreciated my mom was as the source of her own discontent was merely masquerading as a response to my behavior. It was useless to walk on eggshells around her. I came to see the beautiful woman who birthed me into the world was deeply unhappy regardless of my actions. This was where I began to align my choices with those that supported my well-being instead of relying on others as a clear mirror of reflection. I was becoming a mirror onto myself and making great strides in overcoming the codependent patterns of my childhood. And so he came up with this thesis that leads to the first golden rule that I will be sharing in a minute. Other people's adverse reactions to the choices that were useful, that were empowering for me, couldn't cause them any tangible pain outside of their own judgments. And I could relate to this when I received disdain and disagreement when I chose to leave the Catholic Church and follow New Thought, Unity, and other things. I even remember the disdain and the criticism I received when I dabbled in veganism. And I can go on. And this is when I was an adult, let alone forget when I was younger. And so here, this premise leads to golden rule number 1. You've done nothing wrong. What I'd like you to do right now is to think of something that maybe you are still harboring some remorse about, some upsetment, regret over. And just call that to mind. Now I invite you to say to yourself, I've done nothing wrong. Say it again. I've done nothing wrong. Now notice your reaction to it. Does it bring you a sense of uncomfortability? Or does it bring you a sense of release or relief? And so let's look deeper at what this golden rule is about, the premise behind it. So again, we are on a spiritual journey, and our whole spiritual journey is learning about the truth of who we are, the who and the what, but it is also about transitioning out of living from our personality self and claiming our divine identity. Doesn't mean we curse our human experience, but it's about knowing the truth and choosing to live with that, allowing our soul to take the driver's seat and then our personality and our ego to serve that. It is also a premise of golden rule number 1, to realize that every life event and every person that comes into our life is here to awaken us out of our domesticated selves, our domesticated slumber. Now, sometimes those teachers come and they are pleasant lessons, like we've shared about the people in our community that are near and dear to us. And some of those lessons are through love, like we spoke of Gail touching our lives with her prayerful presence and her wisdom. And other times there are people who come into our lives whose behavior is not maybe so honoring, that we believe is the cause of our pain and suffering, but they too are our teachers and are here to awaken us, to urge us to awaken out of our slumber. And then to remember that we are all doing the very best we can in any given moment, operating from the highest place in consciousness that we are capable in this moment. Now, remember sharing a couple of weeks ago that our spiritual journey is not linear, that it is cyclical. It is more like a spiral. And so sometimes, we are naming and claiming and living and using our gifts. We are showing up from our divine essence. And then there are times where maybe I'm living like a victim. Maybe I'm doing a lot of blaming and shaming. But in that moment, if we know that this is all part of us calling us higher, can we relax and say, oh, I've done nothing wrong, that this is all part of my evolution. And so when we are centered in our ego or domesticated self, when we look at that statement, you've done nothing wrong, that is hard to grasp from that consciousness. Because the ego wants to polarize, resists, blame, punish, judge, criticize, resent, regret. And I put the word love in quotes because it's really like conditionally, right? But our soul is always calling us home, tapping on us. It is the GPS back to our divine identity. And the soul knows to embrace everything. When we say, it is all good and it's all well it's like, what? Getting cancer is all good? What? No, that's not what it's meaning, but it's more this like, okay, I'm going to notice the facts of what is going on in my physical world right now in my body. And I know that somehow or another, if I allow it, it is a call for me to go deeper and know the truth of who I am, and that everything is here to help me. And so the soul allows everything. It does not resist. It releases. It knows mercy. It is illumination. It guides. It appreciates everything. Not just some things and not so much others. It empowers from within and it loves unconditionally. And so a nice summary of the golden rule, you've done nothing wrong. When the ego regrets an outcome, the soul rejoices in the opportunity. The soul says, yes, I know more than I knew before. And how great that I had to live out that moment. Think of something that you resisted recently. Sometimes that's a little hard to say, right? Yes, I know more than I knew before. And how great that I had to live out that moment. Yes, coming back from a trip and getting COVID, I was able to get to the point where I said, yes, I know more than I knew before. It was such an awakening and experience. No blame, no shame. I had to see it the way it was meant to be seen. I had to be who I needed to be. I needed to do everything that needed to happen in order to get to this moment where I've been gifted now with a greater perception. Wow, this may not be new stuff to you, but wouldn't this alleviate so much of our own suffering that we inflict on ourselves and others? And so, how do we use the golden rule to move from domesticated slumber and into our divine soul identity? And there are three practices that Matt offers: self-compassion, the golden rule mantra number 1, and forgiveness. So first we look at self-compassion. And here I pull upon the work of Kristen Neff, who's very powerful in the field of self-compassion. I think I've spoken about her before in my classes and in services. And there are 3 components of self-compassion. And so what self-compassion is number 1, we offer ourselves kindness rather than condemning ourselves and judging ourselves for mistakes we have made, shortcomings we've made, or failures we believe we experienced, or when we weren't acting in our fullness. We offer ourselves that same kindness that we would offer a dear friend. The second component is we recognize our common humanity rather than isolating in embarrassment or shame, or I can't share this because then people won't think I'm so spiritual that I'm going through this. So the common humanity is this, right? There is some divine plan. We all seem to come in at this point in our evolution, right? Having that domesticated experience. And so we have that common humanity of knowing that we are here to embrace our humanity, but also to evolve and grow and step and claim our divinity. And then the third component of self-compassion that Kristen Neff offers is being mindful versus over-identifying, is allowing every single emotion and thought to arise, allowing it without being attached to it, without stuffing it, but letting it be there, breathing into it and allowing it to be our teacher and loving ourselves. And so there are some ways that you can employ all of these by taking certain acts. You can write a letter of love to yourself or gentleness that you would offer yourself. You can do loving kindness, meta loving kindness to yourself. You can put on music. We've discussed some of these, and dance to a song or draw a picture that represents the beauty, sing to yourself. And in this pose here with this gentleman, placing your hands over your heart and rocking yourself for a moment. Or if it doesn't feel right over your heart, hugging yourself or rubbing your skin. And it will be even more powerful as you embrace your heart or rub your skin and hug yourself if you recite Golden Rule number 1's mantra. In order to be who I was born to become, life couldn't have happened any other way. So think of what I asked you to recall before: regret or remorse. I want you to put your hands over your heart. I want you to recite this to yourself. In order to be who I was born to become, life couldn't have happened any other way. In order to be who I was born to become, life couldn't be any other way. And there is that invitation that once we are able to hold that for ourselves, that we can offer it to someone else. When someone else doesn't show up in their wholeness and maybe is unkind or is unloving or does something that we disapprove of, we can offer this. We can say the mantra to ourselves silently. In order to be who you were born to become, life couldn't have happened any other way. And this goes to Ruiz's second agreement. Don't take it personally. And so the third practice in living into you've done nothing wrong is forgiveness. And in the words of Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, forgiveness is a process of giving up the false for the true, letting go of error consciousness. So giving up the false, the myths that we hold about ourselves, that we have to be a certain way to be good or bad, to be loved, to be liked, and to let go of our resentments and blames that we hold for ourselves and others because it makes us sick. And so from the ego's perspective, if we are dwelling, we know that we're dwelling in the domesticated self, our ego consciousness, when we're saying things like, well, why do I have to offer forgiveness? Because look at how so-and-so showed up. And so there's this unwillingness. There's this belief that if I offer forgiveness, it means that I am some way saying that what you did was okay. And then we come back to the soul. Before I go to the soul, I just want to say there's also another polarity. It's also not just that if I offer forgiveness, that this would mean that I'm letting the person off the hook. The other pole of that when we're living from our ego is when we're like, when your parents said, okay, you did that, to your sister, go and say sorry to your sister. And you really didn't want to say sorry, but you were conditioned that you had to say those words. So the other pole of the ego in being resistant to it not offering genuine forgiveness is like, okay, this is something I'm morally obligated to do, but I really don't want to. But you know what? I don't want them to not like me. So, or I don't want so-and-so, or I know it's a spiritual rule, so I better do it. But I haven't really gone through the process of self-compassion, really looking what the meaning of the golden rule, you've done nothing wrong, at its essence really means. But from a soul's perspective, forgiveness is offered freely. It is not something that is difficult to do. And we know that every soul that comes before us that makes an indelible impression, good, bad, or ugly, is here in our life, helping us in some way for us to return home and to wake up. And when we are willing to forgive, again, return back to the soul's consciousness, the consciousness of super consciousness, the I am within us, we are empowered. So it is for us to move out of the cycle of victimhood. And so there is also another powerful affirmation or mantra that Matthew Kahn offers, and it is this: thank you for giving me the opportunity to act from a greater level of awareness than the unconsciousness that hurt me. Say that with me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to act from a greater level of awareness than the unconsciousness that hurt me. So when you are struggling, having the willingness to say that affirmation or another, saying, I am just willing to be ready to forgive, is a powerful thing to help us shift. And so, my friends, as we come to a close this morning, I leave you with this golden rule number 1: you've done nothing wrong. And in the words of Matthew Kahn, I can rejoice in my learning and grow without regretting. I can expand and shine without blaming myself. In any given moment, what I choose to do was not a flaw or a human, what I chose to do was not a flaw or human limitation at play. Instead, it was the absolute perfection of divinity getting me to a more expanded vibrational alignment by having me play a character who only appeared to do a series of imperfect things to have experiences I would learn from. Namaste, my friends. And Deborah will seal us off with the affirmation mantra for the golden rule number 1.
Wow, that was truly powerful. Let us say together in the privacy of our homes this beautiful affirmation. In order to be who I was born to become, life couldn't have happened any other way. Matt Kahn.